Come one, come all. It is the Outsiders Podcast. It is Clint Switzer and Noah Gronniger, and we are bringing you our 2013 NFL football preview. We've got two great guests coming on, Noah.
Yeah, Jeffri Chadiha from ESPN, a senior NFL writer, and Sean Salisbury, former NFL quarterback, former ESPN analyst. Jeffri Chadiha is going to break down the NFC for us, while Sean Salisbury breaks down the AFC.
Great news for our fans. Know that means you hear less from us. You got Salisbury with the AFC, Jeff Chadiha with the NFC, and nothing from us. No, that's not true. We're going to bring our predictions on a little later in the show, but it's all about these great guests today.
Yeah, we got the experts to start us off. They're going to give us what their predictions are for each division. They're going to give us their predictions for the 6 playoff teams and their Super Bowl pick.
Absolutely. Cannot wait to hear from those guys. We're going to bring Jeff Chadiha on here. And we are here breaking down the NFC with none other than ESPN.com's Jeffri Chadiha. Jeff, welcome to the Outsiders Podcast. The helmets are strapped on. Training camp's begun. Man, we're about ready for some football out there.
Oh, without question. It's amazing how fast the season comes. It seems like just yesterday that we're celebrating the Ravens beating the 49ers, and now here we are again. Can't wait for it to get started.
Hall of Fame games already happened. Dallas, of course, looking pretty strong in their efforts the other night. As we look at the NFC with you, though, so many questions, so many good teams, so many teams loaded for bear for a championship run on that side of the NFL. Let's start with the NFC South, because as we look at teams like the Atlanta Falcons, who look poised for another title run, we got Sean Payton coming back in New Orleans, Carolina with another year of Cam Newton, and of course the Tampa Bay Bucks look like they're getting better. What do you see out of that division, and who do you think comes out on top?
Well, I still think Atlanta's the cream of the crop in that division. They went to the NFC Championship game last year. They were one play away from being in the Super Bowl. They have the most weapons, probably the most balanced team on offense and defense over there. You look at Matt Ryan, what they gave him in the offseason, as far as an extension, the pickup of Steven Jackson is going to help their run game. They obviously got great receivers in Julio Jones and Roddy White, and Tony Gonzalez coming back for one more season. So you look at what they're doing, how they're built, it's hard to think that they're going to be anything but the best team in that division. And I really think New Orleans is probably going to make a comeback. You know, with Sean Payton returning, they certainly have had a lot of success under him there, and getting back with that offense with Drew Brees and that whole bunch, they should be pretty strong. So I think those two teams right there are going to be in the playoff mix, and the other two teams have to prove themselves.
Yeah, with regards to Carolina, I mean, what do you expect from Cam Newton coming into, it's his third year now. He had kind of a sophomore slump. But the Panthers, a team that need to get better. They need to get better in a hurry, and Cam Newton is going to be the catalyst for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always funny people talk about him having a sophomore slump because he started a pretty good year. I mean, it just wasn't as good as that first year he had, but I think he's facing some pressure this year. The general manager just came out a couple of days ago and said that, he's had great numbers, but it's time for him to win games. And I still believe that they are probably a year or two away from really being a playoff caliber team. They need some help at receiver still. Steve Smith is there, but he's 33, 34 years old. They certainly have some question marks with the head coach. Ron Rivera was kept on, even though they got rid of Marty Hurdy last year, the general manager previously. And whenever you have that dynamic with a team with, the coach is going to be there the following season, it can really have a tough impact on the locker room. So I think Cam will be fine, but I think just their chemistry is really going to be a question mark for them.
Now, as we head to the NFC North, we've heard recently from the organization of the Minnesota Vikings that, hey, don't worry, we have Christian Ponder, we have Matt Castle, but don't worry, fans, everything's going to be fine. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. So, obviously, in that division, you've got Green Bay, you've got the Chicago Bears and Detroit kind of in that mix, and obviously Minnesota's got to be looking at a cellar-dwelling finish. I mean, is that how you see it?
Yeah, I'm still jury's out on them. As long as you got Adrian Peterson, they still have a pretty good defense. That's a pretty good formula for success. They pretty much rode that last year. They've had a good draft, and they've added some pieces that if those guys grow up fast, you could see them, staying in that division. I'm not so certain Chicago's going to stick around. That 9-10 win mark where they've been the last 2 years. I think Detroit it could really struggle, and they've had a lot of issues off the field the last couple of years, and I'm still not sold on their running game really being strong enough to complement their passing game. Really. So I look at Green Bay as being the class
That's interesting that you still have the Packers on top. I actually like the Bears, even the Vikings with Adrian Peterson running wild. I mean, the Packers lose Brian Bulaga, right tackle, for the season with an ACL. They still don't have a running game. They lose Greg Jennings. They lose Charles Woodson. How do you see the Packers still staying on top? Just Aaron Rodgers alone?
That's the guy I'm thinking about. He's one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's been able to win games for that team when they didn't have, a great offensive line. So I think, Bulaga's a huge hit, but they found ways to get by when they couldn't protect Aaron Rodgers. They've added a couple good running backs in the draft. I think Eddie Lacy is a sleeper. People have been, getting on him about his weight issues and his passion for the game, but he's a sturdy, strong running back. So I think he'll be a very good complement to what they do in the passing game. I don't think they really miss Greg Jennings. He had some injuries the last couple of years, hadn't been on the field as much. I think they've been waiting for Jordy Nelson to step up and be that number 1 guy for them. They still have James Jones. They obviously like what Randall Cobb gave them out of the slot. Michael Finley's still there, so there's an embarrassment of riches there offensively, and I think again with still leaving too. That's again, it's more leadership that you lose there than on-field play. You're talking about a guy who's probably playing 20 to 25 plays a game at this point in his career, and they'd had some young DBs they wanted to get more time for, and so they found a way to get that time for them. So again, Aaron Rodgers being there, Clay Matthews, B.J. Raji, they've got some guys who are still playmakers in Green Bay.
Going to the NFC West, everybody wants to talk about the 49ers and Seahawks as the class of that division, and honestly they are. But I like what I see in the St. Louis Rams, drafting Tavon Austin, bringing in Jared Cook from Tennessee, the tight end, and Jake Long, bringing him in from the Miami Dolphins, the left tackle. The Arizona Cardinals bring in Carson Palmer. What do you see in that division?
Oh, it's going to be a dogfight, and ironically, 2-3 years ago, we were talking about this division as the worst in football. With Seattle won it with a 7-9 record. But you start to look at how all these teams want to play, and Arizona, I think, is still sort of the odd man out here, but they all want to be physical, and they all want to run the football. They all want to beat you up on defense, and the Rams certainly fit into that category. You look at what Jeff Fisher really brought that team last year, and I saw them 2 or 3 times. He brought a mindset, and he wants that team to be tough, and he wants that team to be physical, and he wants that team not to back down to anybody. So I think if you're going to play against the 49ers or Seattle, you need to have that kind of attitude. But as far as winning that division, even with the injuries they have, I still like the 49ers right now. They still have more talent than anybody else in the division, and I really think Colin Kaepernick is going to take that next step in his career this coming season.
Do you see the Rams being able to possibly make a playoff spot, or do you see them around 6, 7, 8 wins this year?
I think it's going to be tough for them. I think that they are a year away from really being in the mix there, because in that division, they're going to have to, and they won 4 out of 6 games against division teams last year, so they could compete with who they were playing against. But I just think it's going to be hard for them to get to 10 wins in that division. I think San Francisco is going to win about 11, 12 games. I think Seattle will do that. And then you start to look at other parts of the NFC where you've got Atlanta, you've got Green Bay, you've got whoever comes out of the NFC East. New Orleans will be in there. So you're going to have about maybe 8 to 10 teams that are capable of winning 10 games. And I just don't know if St. Louis, where they play football in that division, is in that group right now.
All right, heading over to everyone's favorite division, especially ESPN's. We've got the NFC East with the New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys, Washington Redskins, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles bring in Chip Kelly. The Dallas Cowboys still ignoring the safety position ever since Darren Woodson left, and they kind of whiffed on Roy Williams. They thought he'd be a Hall of Famer, and that didn't quite work out. Where do you see that division?
Yeah, that's a tough one right now. I would still go with Washington right now because of RG3, because of Mike Shanahan. I think you put Mike Shanahan with a great quarterback, you're gonna have a lot of success. I would love to pick the Giants. I liked them 2 years ago, but they win a Super Bowl and they just drift for a while. And I think they're back in that drifting mode. They have a lot of moving parts. Steven Joras Philadelphia and Dallas, especially Philadelphia, because I just don't believe Chip Kelly's offense is going to translate to the NFL as well as other people do. And with Dallas, I think Dallas is not nearly as talented as they're always proclaimed to be.
I want to ask you, about this Riley Cooper situation in Philadelphia, and not necessarily what he said or what happened, but just how you expect him to be treated by his teammates. You've been in NFL locker rooms, kind of, how this might work. Michael Vick has come out and said, yeah, I forgive him as a teammate. I forgive him. Some of the other players haven't been quite so forgiving. How do you think that's going to play out? Is this something that could tear a team apart and ruin a season ultimately?
Well, it can, but ultimately the only guy who really needs to forgive him is Michael Vick, because he's the guy throwing the football. Nothing else Riley Cooper does on a football field will impact anybody else. He's running his routes out there. He has to beat defensive backs. He has to block for running backs. But as far as someone getting him the football, that responsibility is Michael Vick's. As long as he still believes in it, he should be okay. I'm a big believer that no matter what happens in the NFL locker room, over time, guys move forward. They realize what they have to do. It's a team for a reason. And sometimes you have to swallow things, accept things that you don't necessarily like. But I don't see them tearing that locker room apart because of Riley Cooper. In reality, I think probably even in the last week or so, it's probably become a lot less of an issue for those guys, if I had to guess.
I wanted to ask you about this Cowboys safety position. They got Will Allen, NFL journeyman, and then they've got Barry Church and Matt Johnson fighting it out for the other safety position. I haven't seen a team this scared of a position since with the Kansas City Chiefs and quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happened with Dallas, I think part of it comes down to they've had a lot of change, turnover at the defensive coordinator there. In the last, since they've had Blake Phillips who's running the defense, they've had Rob Ryan in there. Now they've got USC dad, I'm from his name now, Monty Gibson. And it's, everybody has a different expectation from the safety position. And I think, to be honest with you, I think that position is probably the hardest to play in the NFL these days, because you really want to find a guy ideally who can run support and cover. And it's hard to find those guys in college football nowadays. Usually you're either taking a guy who's a big corner and hoping he's physical enough to play safety, or you're taking a smaller safety who you think can possibly cover people. And so you start looking around the NFL, some of the best safeties who are out there right now. Most of those guys are going to be around, Ed Reed's side, Jairus Bird's side, and they're probably not going to be a lot of guys who are that spectacular.
All right, we have been breaking down the NFC with Jeffri Chadiha of ESPN. Before we let you go, we got to get your 6 playoff teams from the NFC and who represents that conference in the Super Bowl. Put you on the spot here. You know what you get here with the outsiders, Jeffrey.
I know, yeah. Well, I was just thinking that said 10 teams could win 10 games. Now I got to will it down to 6 teams winning enough games in the postseason. Well, I'll say I know that the Niners and the Seahawks will be there from the West. I'll start there. I know Atlanta will be there from the South, so I'll take them. I believe in Green Bay still. I know you guys aren't as crazy about them. I like them. I'll take the Redskins. And so my 5th team, which is probably my sixth seeded team in the NFC playoffs, man. You know what? I'll take Chicago. Why not?
Fair enough.
I'll take them.
And who comes out of that?
I'll take the Niners. I think that even with their injuries, if they're able to get Crabtree back later in the year, and losing Chris Culver at corner is a big loss. But if they're able to get their secondary figured out, I think it should be pretty good.
Well, Jeffrey, we can't thank you enough. Of course, before we let you go, once again, we got to bring up the fact you and Chris Carter just came out with a book. It's called Go Deep. I advise everyone to go check it out. Give our listeners a little bit of info about what the book is about and how it kind of came about, and how you and Chris Carter got involved in this thing.
Well, it's really a book that has 2 different elements to it. One is that it's kind of a memoir of his career, but we're also using his career and actually his whole life as a way of looking at the wide receiver position, because when he started playing football at 8 years old in Ohio, Middletown, Ohio, receivers were not nearly as popular as they are today. He wanted to be a running back or a quarterback, and most of the guys around him wanted to be that because
Well, it's a great read. Advise everyone to go check it out. You and Chris Carter put together a wonderful piece. Some great stories about some of everyone's favorite receivers. You talked about Keyshawn Johnson. That's kind of my favorite segment of the entire book. That guy's great. We've already kept you too long, Jeffrey. We can't appreciate it enough. Everybody go check out Jeffri Chadiha on ESPN.com. Some of the best work in the NFL. We appreciate it as always, man. Take care. We'll catch up soon. Probably run into you at a Kansas City event sometime down the road.
Yeah, I'd love to do it, guys. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully we'll see each other at a Chiefs game here pretty soon.
Absolutely, we'll do it, Jeffrey. We'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much to Jeff Chadiha for coming on. Really likes those Falcons, but has the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. And he likes the Packers way more than I do. I think they're going to struggle without Bulaga, without Charles Woodson, without Greg Jennings, but he still has them making the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to see. He made our job a lot easier. He just broke down the entire NFC by himself, so we're good on that end. And coming up next, we have Sean Salisbury, a huge treat, joining us on the road talking about the AFC. Sean Salisbury, guys, if you haven't heard him before, is flat out one of the best analysts in sports. He tells it like it is. He's brash. He doesn't pull any punches. We love Sean. He is really sort of an unofficial third outsider.
He definitely is. And Clint, you have me so excited. I just can't wait any longer. Let's bring him on.
And we are joined right now by Sean Salisbury, one of our best guests coming back on the show. Sean, it's good to hear from you. We're going to be talking some AFC football. How's it going with you, man? Ready for some football?
Sounds good. Yeah, sure am. I already hate the preseason. I'm one of those guys who's such a tease. It's time to get the regular season started. We've only had one game. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, and here we are talking about the AFC. We just had ESPN's Jeffri Chadiha on breaking down the NFC. Sean, I'll tell you what, as we start here with the AFC West, as we're here in Kansas City, a division that looks to be owned by the Denver Broncos, are you of that same volition as well?
Yeah, you know what, it's an interesting one of those sports, unlike many others. I mean, in the NBA, it's the same dogs every year, the same guys, same front runners, San Antonio, Miami, Lakers. I mean, we know we could pretty much put a fingertip on, on 90% of the teams that are going to be in the playoffs for the most part. In the NFL, there's some top-heavy teams, but the great thing about free agency is that you can go 1-15 and 2 years later be a playoff team. So, there's no doubt when you got Peyton Manning on your football team, you're the front runner. I mean, one thing that people underestimate, and maybe not on the field and in his locker room, but fans and media themselves underestimate the fact that here's a guy who, we know he can throw, we know he's smart, we know he's been in the league, and we know if he's healthy that, he's going to be an MVP candidate. But the greatest thing about Manning is he keeps you out of bad plays. And when you keep a guy with his ability to understand coverage, and understand concepts, and understand what you're trying to get accomplished, he sees the big picture. And it's not talked about. I know we all talk about his audibleizing and stuff at the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about the very simple inability to take a bad play at the line of scrimmage and change it to something good. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of guys in this league. A handful of them that have ownership on that, and that's what makes them the favorite. Obviously, the situation with Von Miller, they're going to be able to rush the passer regardless. John Fox is a great defensive coach. They're going to be able to run it, and Peyton will keep them in good plays, and he's as good as anybody, along with the guy in New England, at taking what we would consider average receivers in certain positions and certain, no matter where he goes. And I'm not saying Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harrison were average, but other guys. You say, well, maybe it's a 4th or 5th round guy or 6th rounder. I mean, he's turning an Eric Decker, who's a good player, into a star. So he takes guys that some people have not heard of and makes them stars. There's no question. Not only are they the favorite in the AFC West, but when you talk about Super Bowl possibilities, they've got to be. If you don't hear them, their team come out of your mouth in the first 3 words, then you're probably not paying much attention to the NFL.
What do you see in the rest of the AFC West? You got the Chiefs bringing in Andy Reid and Alex Smith. The Chargers draft Manti Te'o, bring in Dwight Freeney, and the Raiders bring in Matt Flynn. What do you see for the rest?
Well, I'll get to Kansas City in a second. I'll save them for last. As far as the Chargers go, having a pass rusher on the edge is always important. And that's a change of coaches with Coach McCoy. I think that, they like young and enthusiastic, and I think they needed a fresh change. Well, I think Norv Turner is probably the best offensive coordinator in football, one of the best we've ever had. When it comes to the head coach, it got to a certain level, and they couldn't get over the hump. And so maybe, a change is good. And Coach McCoy will provide that. He obviously has taken with Peyton Manning. Well, I know Peyton learned something from him, but I'm quite sure Coach McCoy probably learned more from Peyton Manning that he did from him last year as a coordinator in Denver. So brings in into the enthusiasm in San Diego, and they need it. This is a team that, like the Cowboys, every year we talk about all their talent, and they always seem to come up short. They beat themselves. and the Chargers have killed themselves. And for Phillip Rivers, this is a monster season for him. I think he's under as much pressure as any quarterback in the league. Now, maybe not because it's San Diego and such a casual town, but as far as living up to what we expected of him after he provided such great leadership the first handful of years, the last 2 years he's been awful. He's been piss poor. And when I say that, I know the team hasn't been as good, and this guy's a competitor, and he's got to keep competing and all that, and without him, the team doesn't exist. But that, it isn't going to function as well. But he has not played the way that Phillip Rivers we expect him to play. He's a great guy and a wonderful football player, but he's throwing it to the other team too much. He's taken the pressure and applied it to himself and is not able to get over that hump. And so he has got to find a way to eliminate that, to make them better, and get some help around him. They don't, as far as Matt Titeo, I think he's going to be a decent football player. I would not look for him to make some impact like Brian Urlacher or Ray Lewis right away. I think he'll be a good player. I don't expect him to be in 12 Pro Bowls, but maybe what's happened to him, maybe it lights a fire under him, and he all of a sudden, bam, he gets to the point where he becomes a better player than we thought. But I think he's a decent player, but I'm not looking for Matt Titeo to be the reason that the San Diego Chargers compete out there. So, Chargers will be fine. As far as the Oakland Raiders go, I think Matt Flynn's a definite. Hang on one second, guys. Sorry, I'm driving. The police are right there. I think Matt Flynn's a definite.
Okay, that was a good reason. We'll let you off for that.
If you leave that one in, you don't want to chop that out. I'm driving, and the police are sitting there in their car, and I want to make sure I don't get a ticket. So, Matt Flynn, boy, that's so much for Matt Flynn's comment, huh?
Sean Sullivan getting pulled over would never happen. Come on, Sean.
That's exactly right. You know what? Hadden Flynn, guys, I think it's an upgrade from Carson. I do. Even though he didn't have the experience Carson Palmer, I think there's a confidence about Matt Flynn. Here's a guy who was great in Green Bay. All of a sudden, when he had to fill in, and very obviously capable. And when he went to Seattle, I had him penciled in as a starter, gets an elbow injury, and all of a sudden Russell Wilson plays like Superman, and he never gets his job back. Well, I think the Raiders, with leadership, and there's a feistiness about him that they haven't had at that position in a while, guys, since Rich Gannon. I'm not comparing him to Gannon, but there's a similarity. There's a toughness, and there's a get to the office early. He's a grinder. And they've had these superstars, the Jason, big tall throwers, and Carson Palmer, and all the Jamarcus Russell, and Russell's still trying to find out if he can M&M away from 320, trying to get back in the league. So I think Matt Flynn's an upgrade. And the one thing the Raiders will do, they will be aggressive. And they've always been aggressive. They've got to limit the penalties, but as long as their run game is healthy and that quarterback protects the football, they'll have a chance. I think they're going to surprise some people because of Matt Flynn if he's healthy. I don't think they're dangerous enough to be a big-time, deep playoff threat, but they're going to beat a team they're not supposed to beat or three because Matt Flynn's a good football player as long as he's healthy, and people wonder about him. I would have loved him in Seattle, but Russell Wilson's just a unique individual. So, and then you add Alex Smith to Kansas City and Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I can't believe he doesn't get more credit for what he did in Philadelphia and for the leadership he provided for all those years, but there was a change needed for both, not just Philadelphia, but for Andy Reid. And I love what he's about. I love his attitude. He's not a self-promoter, and he's not a big me guy. And I think Andy Reid's going to serve him well there. He's a gentleman, been through a lot of adversity in his private life and in his football life. I think they got Alex Smith at the right time, guy with a chip on his shoulder. We know they've got all kinds of guys. That team underachieved so bad last year, and the changes now in the front office all the way around. This team, you don't sing with 5 Pro Bowlers and a couple alternates and be that bad. So they're a couple plays and a couple players away from being better, and I think they're going to give Denver I think they're going to give Denver all they can handle as long as Alex continues. I think he was leading the league in passing or second or third when he got hurt and never got his job back. So this is a guy who's got a lot to prove, and I think with a chip on his shoulder, they've got some weapons. They've got great team speed. I think the Kansas City Chiefs could be one of those teams if you're looking for who's your surprise, and they really shouldn't be because when you look at going into last year, some people had them winning the division going into the season last year until it all went to hell in a handbasket. So I wouldn't sleep on Kansas City. I wouldn't sleep, and I am not an Alex Smith apologist, but I'm also not an Alex Smith hater. I think when he's been through as many coaches and coordinators as he's been through, I think people are going to like some Alex Smith, and I think that Andy Reid can make sure he's settled down and settles in. He had no business losing his job last year, but you can lose it to an injury, and I understand that. It wasn't because of poor play. Alex Smith will be a good addition, and the guy's a monster upgrade from what you've had there the last couple of years, and it won't be close.
That's for sure. Moving on to the AFC South, we've got the Texans. They add Clemson wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, looking for that complement to Andre Johnson. They had Ed Reed, and then you got the Colts seeing if they can make it back to the playoffs, and the Titans and Jaguars trying to get their heads above water.
Well, let's start with it probably doesn't matter, Jaguars. I mean, they're guys are going to struggle. I don't see I mean, when I look at that football team, I don't see a lot of victories. I don't see a lot of points. And you know what? There's so much. Well, can the quarterback play better? Who's going to be there? Who's going to end up being the starter long term? I mean, there's so many ifs on that football team that they'll be picking high again next year. Let's put it that way. I don't expect them to be. They'll beat some teams because they've got some athletic players on their team, but I don't think they're a big team to fear. As far as the Titans go, Munchak Mike provides a toughness for them. To me, it all depends on, for them, they've got to be healthy, but is Jake Locker ready now to take that next step? He's a wonderful athlete, great feet. Is he ready now to take that step to where when things aren't going well, he can take the game into his own hands and win it for you? That, to me, is great quarterback. When you've proven that you can play within the system and do it, but when everybody else, when injuries are around you, like when Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago, 11, 13 guys on their Super Bowl year on IR, they go in as a wild card team, the guy loads them on his back and carries them to a Super Bowl and a championship and wins the MVP. So will he be at that time? Obviously not Aaron Rodgers, but can he now elevate to the next level? That to me is the biggest question on that football team. Can Jake Locker be a franchise quarterback? He's got franchise ability, but is he calm enough and accurate enough with his arm to match his feet? And I think that will be interesting. They will always play you tough. I was a teammate of Munchak's. I've known Mike a long time. I know what Bruce Matthews, the offensive line coach. I know the attitude of that franchise. And they put it this way: you're going to know you've been in games when you play them, and that's the way they've always been. But they still have to make plays and execute. When you get to the two best teams in the division, the Colts and the Texans, you had a leadership and Ed Reed. Ed's best football's probably behind him. But I'll tell you what: I'll bet you by the end of the season he has 5 interceptions, and everybody on that team's raving about, no pun intended, raving about his leadership, as we all know, and what he provides for them. You remember the leadership, and this is that Darren Sharper brought the Saints guys that Super Bowl season.
Absolutely.
Everyone's when Darren was, people started questioning at the end of his career, but Darren ended up having a Pro Bowl season with all those interceptions and great leadership. Well, you're going to get that times 2 from Ed, because as much as I love Darren, Ed's been one of the best free safeties we've ever seen. And it'd be hard for me if I went through my top 50 players of all time. I don't know how Ed Reed stays off that list, guys. I think he's that good at that position. So he provides it and goes to a team that desperately needs that one extra guy. We know they're going to pressure the quarterback. We know they're up front in their front seven. They're nasty. They're going to get, with Cushing getting healthy. I mean, this can be a nasty team. Now you look at the offensive side, guys. They score. They'll always score. They'll continue to score. They'll run it. They'll throw it. They'll screen you. I think Schaub's still an underrated player. I like Ron Jaworski when I saw his list. Matt Schaub, to me, is a top 15 quarterback. I, too, would have him above a lot of the guys Jaws did. When I go through it, I felt that Matt Schaub was one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks the last 4 or 5 years anyway. I believe in him. He's never going to beat you with his feet. He looks like he's about 60, and he still knows how to win. So I'm a Schaub fan, but they can run it. When they got Foster, and now adding a home run hitter like they did, bringing him in from Clemson, and now you add Andre Johnson, who's still a top flight receiver, but not at the top 5 or 6 anymore, but big and physical. They've added another dimension. This team's dangerous, very dangerous, and I think it's a 2-horse race there with the Colts. You probably, if we look at their roster, guys, you go down to I'm talking about the football fans. You can't go down their roster and probably name, unless guys like you and me who may study it, but I'm talking about just solid football fans. You can't go to a person in Pittsburgh and say, name me 10 guys on the Colts roster. They probably don't know their names, except the guy who runs the show and a couple others. That's how good the Luck is and what he's meant to this team. I love what Chuck Pagano brings to the table. I'll tell you what, I love what Bruce Arians brought to the table. What a story that was. They will miss him. I promise you, they will miss him. And I think guys, when you look at the end of this season, thank God they got them, that they have Andrew Luck as their quarterback, because I think that's going to prove to be one of the monster losses in the NFL, player or coach, this season. And I'm a Luck fan, so he'll keep them, guys. He is so good and so mature. How lucky is this franchise that they're going to be able to say, that if no injury, that for basically the better part of 27 to 20 to 30 years,
unreal,
that they've had 2 quarterbacks. I mean, it's crazy. The Luck strikes gold for you, and you're able to strike that gold twice. So that's going to be a 2-horse race. Health will have something to do with it, as it always does. But can the Colts defense withstand the pressure of the offense by a Texas Texans team, and then vice versa. Can you not allow Andrew Luck to take over? Because remember we talked about Jake Locker. This is a quarterback now who can load you up like a good hitter who's hit 14, to do what a great hitter does when he's in a groove. When Pujols was in St. Louis and homer after homer, game-winning hit after game-winning hit. Andrew Luck provides that. If things aren't going well, he can carry, and he proved that last year. So I think we're in for one hell of a two-team race. Both, I believe, are playoff teams because of the quarterbacks and the threat. But man alive, Bruce Arians is going to be a big loss in my opinion. Now maybe I'm crazy, but I think that he brought a lot to the table.
Absolutely did. Great story last year, him coming back from cancer. And as we head over to the AFC East, documented problems with obviously with the New England Patriots, but there's problems with the rest of the three teams too, mostly football related. So where do you see this division playing out? And is New England still the class of it despite all their losses?
Yeah, guys, when you look at the teams in the division, Buffalo, hey, new coach, they're probably going to end up, not probably, they're going to end up having a new quarterback regardless who it is. And I would imagine EJ's going to end up being the starter eventually. Maybe within the first month. I don't think Kevin Cobb can sustain. He's a decent player, but I don't think he's going to last the season. And I've talked to some people that have coached him at other places, and the comment they made to me is he's just a guy. He's just a guy who stumbled into the right place, right time, got paid a lot of money for being just a guy. And I've always believed that Kevin Cobb was a backup that could service you as a starter, but isn't carrying you through the season. And that's not going to happen. They drafted E.J. Hanger for a reason, and they're going to grow with that, and they're going to suffer through some growing pains. But, as it is, you're going to come to Buffalo one day, they're going to be down by 3 touchdowns. They're going to score 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and beat the Patriots or beat a team, the Pittsburgh. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way they do. And then the Jets, as dysfunctional as it gets in football, and that includes the Raiders and the Cowboys. I don't, I don't know what to expect from them. When you can ask me about a lot of teams, and I think I have a pretty good idea, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what to think about this team. I've always been a Rex Ryan. I love Rex. He's been great to me, and I love him. And sometimes I think it's hilarious because he likes to get a rise out of people, and they don't understand his personality. But Rex is not stupid. And people say, he's just Rex is a good football guy, probably a little risky at times. But you guys know this. What receivers group is going to show up? Are we looking at a team that they don't know their identity? They haven't known their identity in the last year and a half. The first 2 seasons they got to the AFC Championship game, they knew their identity. Get after the quarterback, force turnovers, and run the football. And then they got into trying to do a bunch of different things, and they haven't known their identity for 2 years. And they don't even know who their leadership is. Where does it come from? The quarterback position? No Revis. What about this guy? Maybe this guy. Is it going to come from a rookie and Geno Smith? Who knows? Is Sanchez going to have rapid ears and hear everything everybody says? And if he throws an interception, get booed? Think about this, guys. If he starts, you talk about the shortest leash in the world. What's going to happen if he throws 3 picks in the first home game and they lose? And Mark's got great physical skills, but his biggest weakness is his emotional ability to overcome nonsense. The New York Knicks, they're going to roast him. So I don't know how mentally tough he's going to be able to be, or emotionally tough. Now, Geno Smith started out last year in college. For the first 6 games, I've never seen anybody play that well. And now he's talking, he wants to be the starter. I don't know. We're in for one hell of a ride with the New York Jets. Guys, I don't know if they're 4-12 this year. 8, 10-6. I look on the less than 500 side because I just don't think they're a stable football team. I just don't. So I don't consider them a playoff team either. And they may shock me, but the quarterback better play well. It's a 2-horse race. Patriots obviously in the lead. I like what Miami's done this offseason. Spent a lot of money on both sides of the football. I need more explosive run game. It'll help Tannehill. And the funny thing about it is he had a pretty decent season as a rookie. When you look at Wilson, Griffin, and Luck, it made it look like he and Brandon Wheaton were stiff, and they're not. Right. Tannehill's a pretty good player, but he's still playing the position. So, still learning to play it. So, athletic, big, strong, fast guy. Got to see him a little bit more accurate. Got to get him up in that 60% range, and that'll help. The one thing about it seems so simple. He's got to understand all he has to do is just get first downs. Quit trying to make every big play. Just get first downs. That's what Manning does. Get first downs. And the clock keeps moving, and the ball keeps moving, and we keep the defense off the field. So I like some of the places they've made decisions in the front 7, to re-signing players, getting a quarterback, trying to get some weapons for him. I like the direction Miami's headed, and I think they are a threat to New England because New England lost weapons, guys. I don't care how you slice it. The one thing, when you got Brady, you're going to be in every game. You're going to have a chance. And knowing Bill Belichick, he'll make up for it, and they'll end up 12-4 and have home field advantage. That's what they do. But there are some holes there, and they don't have the tight ends, to two of them, the two and your best weapon at wide, you lose your three biggest weapons. And people can say, well, this guy's a replacement for this guy, and he'll replace him, but really, you don't lose three guys like that, and all of a sudden just, it's no big deal. Of course it's a big deal, but they've got number 12, and they've got Bill Belichick. So if anybody all of a sudden just pushes them by the wayside, they're making a monster mistake, because Brady loves this kind of stage. He'll never tell you it, but he absolutely loves the stage that you're about to put him under, and to prove to everybody that once again he can get him where he wants to go by being him. Big challenges there. The people aren't going to be picking them to win a Super Bowl, but I'm going to tell you what, guys, if you sleep on them, they're going to be in the playoffs, and they will be dangerous as always.
Well, maybe we'll have a race in the AFC East for the first time in about 12 years, so that'll be exciting. Moving on to the AFC North, we've got the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens, but they lose Anquan Boldin, Paul Kruger, Ed Reed, Donnell Ellerbe, Ray Lewis. I mean, just a completely new team out there. And I think the Bengals can take this division. I like them to win it. And then you've got the Cleveland Browns, always near the bottom. They're just the Cleveland Browns. And the Pittsburgh Steelers lose Mike Wallace and James Harrison. What do you see from that division?
Wow, man, I am with you on that. People have asked me, and I'm going to tell you right now that one of the easiest, as far as my quickest responses that I ever had when somebody had asked me right now, because I don't like to usually pick my winners until the preseason's over with an injury and all those things. But you know what? I said Cincinnati unequivocally to me is the favorite in that division. I think Andy Dalton's got star quality. They are monsters in the passing game at wide receiver. A.J. Green is one. If I had three receivers to pick, he's one of them. They'll run the football. They're pretty nasty on defense. They're well disciplined, well coached. I am convinced that they can make things happen. I'm convinced that they can make things happen and win that division. The Baltimore Ravens and with Cincinnati, guys, I'm not only convinced they can make that happen. Like last year in the playoffs, if they will play well and get started early in a postseason game, I think they're a dangerous threat in January. I do. I'm a big fan. I think they're a dangerous threat in January, and I think that they can make a huge impact. When you get to Pittsburgh, guys, I think they're the second best team in the division. Ben Roethlisberger, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aside from the Patriots and maybe, I'm trying to think if there's one of the Ravens have done a great job with Ozzie Newsome of being able to retool after losing veterans or an injury. They're about as good as anybody at hanging around playoff time all the time. So you can't keep them down long. That's the way they do it. And guys, it all starts the toughest position, but most important position, no matter what anybody wants to say. Quarterback. Look at last year's playoffs. I think there was one team, I can't remember who it was, that was in the playoffs. I'd have to go through the playoff list again. That had a quarterback that really that didn't run the show. I mean, quarterbacks look how well Flacco played. 11 touchdowns, no picks, or one to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, whatever it was, 13.
Amazing.
Win a Super Bowl. I mean, you take a look up and down. Manning, Brady. I mean, you go up and down. Matt Ryan, Aaron Ryan. It's all dominant quarterbacks. So for the most part, you're going to, out of those 12 teams, 10 of them are going to have quarterbacks that are Pro Bowl caliber and have a pretty monster season. And Ben's capable of that. So I think that can happen. So I put them in there. No Mike Wallace. That's big speed on the outside. I always believe you can find receivers with speed's hard, and the Pittsburgh Steelers need that speed so they don't come back to being a plodding football team. But they're nasty and they're physical, and they seem to find a way to replace front seven players. Baltimore, big question mark, but they do have the quarterback in place. They do have some key elements in place. They lost a lot, guys, but I trust Ozzie Newsome. You look at tape and you say, gosh, John, how can you trust this? I just do. If anybody thinks that's a 6-10 team, I promise you they're not. They will compete. They're going to split somehow with Baltimore or with Pittsburgh, split somehow with Cincinnati. They'll be around. Now, are they hungry enough? Is the emotion from Ray and Ed and losing them and winning the Super Bowl, how that is, that hunger factor, and getting a $100 billion contract for Joe Flacco? Will they have that same urgency that they got to have? And I don't know if they will, but they will be a player in disrupting this whole thing. And then finally, the final team in that division, Cleveland. I had North Turner's big guys because he's in his element now. He can cut it loose. He has nothing to lose in Cleveland. They're going to add some stuff to the passing game. I think Brandon Wheaton did a nice job considering. And guys, look at their losses last year. They were in quite a few games. I mean, it's not like you bullied them all season long, up and down, just beat them like a drum and bullied them. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, they're an embarrassment. They weren't an embarrassment. They were in a lot of games. They lost late, had a chance, turned it over, couldn't kick a field. I mean, so don't think that they're just going to roll over and play dead, because they won't. But I think that's a pretty fun division, because I think the last place team, Cleveland, is capable of knocking off Cincinnati in a game or Pittsburgh in a game. So I like the completeness of that division in the AFC. But Cleveland's no threat to be a playoff team unless, David Copperfield and Houdini are playing on that team, but they will disrupt.
Well, guys, we're talking to Sean Salisbury, who is dodging the fuzz at every turn here just to be on the line with us. We really appreciate it. We've got the whole AFC broken down. Now, we just talked with Jeffri Chadiha from ESPN. He sent the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl from the NFC. Who are you going to send from the AFC to combat that?
You know what, I'll tell you, I like Jeff's pick. I would have taken the 49ers. I think the 49ers, the two best teams in the NFC, didn't mind both reside in the same division. I think the 49ers and Seahawks are the battle, and I'm about to play. Guys, think this is going to be the Patriots Colts for the next handful of years when you think about it, the Ravens Steelers, and it starts right there with those two quarterbacks. I think it's and two coaches that don't like each other. I think it's kind of fun. Makes for great drama through the next handful of years as long as these guys stay in place. I don't know if there's in my mind, I'm sitting here looking at, oh my gosh, is this a guarantee? I'm going with Denver in the AFC. I think you're going to get, the Rocky Mountains and a Seattle West Coast, Northwest San Francisco team in the Super Bowl. I got to go with the Broncos, because I think they're the most complete team in the AFC considering what happened in New England. I'm going to go with the Broncos, but I'm keeping a close eye on two teams, the Houston Texans and the Cincinnati Bengals, and think they have a chance to disrupt that whole picture and be that team. But I'm going to go with Denver as long as Manning's healthy. I think they're the best team and could possibly be sitting on home field advantage.
Well, Sean, I'll tell you what, great stuff as always. Let's catch up again once the season has started and once real football gets going. And in the meantime, stay off the radar of the fuzz, man, because you don't want the heat coming down on you.
And you panic. You drive down, there's a cell phone, you duck it down. I tried to hide my seat, but it's really hard to drive and steer when you're down looking at the foot pedals and the top of the thing. So, yes, we got through it. I appreciate your slight working with me on the slight delay, but anytime you guys need me on, you let me know. It's been an honor. I appreciate you guys doing a spectacular job. I'm glad we got to get it done.
We always love it. And if they say anything, if they do pull you over, they'll recognize you as that guy from the bench warmers. It'll be all good, man. They got you covered.
Oh, yeah, and then they'll make the ticket for $6,000. Thanks.
Exactly. Hey, Sean, thanks a lot, man. Safe travels.
All right, bye-bye.
Big thanks, as always, to Sean Salisbury for joining us. Always love having him on. He dodged the police in his vehicle just to be able to get on and do this interview today.
Yeah, Sean, we just want you to focus on the interview. Keep your eyes on the road, and don't worry about those police. If need be, the Outsiders will send a lawyer and a check down to Texas for you to take care of that.
Good news for us, Noah, Jeffri Chadiha, and Sean Salisbury. They pretty much took a big load off our backs today. They broke down the entire NFL team for team. They got their Super Bowl picks in. Our job is pretty much done here. I say, though, we go a little bit further. We give a little bit of our opinion because there are 2 or 3 people that tune in to hear what we have to say.
Our mothers, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you guys very much for that. So what I want to ask from you, though, is I want to talk about a surprise-type team. Now, we heard from Sean, we heard from Jeff about their playoff picks. I want to hear some surprises as far as teams that were maybe really bad a year ago, kind of like maybe a worst to first type scenario or worst to playoff type scenario.
I like the Carolina Panthers to finish second in the NFC South and possibly fight for a 6th playoff spot. I also like the St. Louis Rams staying with the NFC to make some noise. I don't see them making the playoffs just because of who they're in the division with, the Seahawks and 49ers, but I definitely like those 2 teams.
2 teams I really like are the Detroit Lions. I think coming back, Matthew Stafford, another year healthy. You got Megatron out there. You bring Reggie Bush in. I think that's going to be a dynamic offense. Defense, not sold on. Maybe not a division champion type quality team there in Detroit, but I think they could be a playoff team. As well as the Cleveland Browns, like what they have coming back. Brandon Weeden was no slouch a year ago. Trent Richardson anchoring that run game. Really like what the Cleveland Browns have. I think that could be 2 surprises right there. Now, before we sign off officially, we got to do our Super Bowl picks. Now, be careful because the 2 best teams in the NFL will likely not meet for the Super Bowl because you got to be 9-7 or 10-6 to be in that Super Bowl game.
Yeah, our 2 guests, Jeffri Chadiha and Sean Salisbury, picked the San Francisco 49ers and Denver Broncos. Little too cookie cutter for me. I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals from the AFC and the Seattle Seahawks from the NFC, with the Seattle Seahawks winning that game.
I like that. Bold, yet also a lot of people would agree with you that those are going to be 2 very good teams this year. And why not? Why not? For me, I pick this team to win every year because Tom Brady's there. And 5 times out of 10 or so, I'm correct. The New England Patriots, if they get back there, they're going to fly under the radar. Tom Brady's going to find his weapons as the season goes on. They're going to win the division with a 10-win, 11-win type record, fly under the radar, go on the road and beat someone in the playoffs, and look, they're right back in the Super Bowl, taking on the Atlanta Falcons, who do not fit my mold as a typical 9-7, 10-6 injury-riddled team to get to the Super Bowl. But I think the Falcons get there and win it. I got the Falcons. Tony Gonzalez comes back. Matt Ryan's locked up. Roddy White, Steven Jackson comes in. Questions on defense, certainly. Falcons do it. Falcons are your Super Bowl champions. That would be a Super Bowl I would love to see, and sign me up for it right now.
Should be an interesting season. Can't wait to get it started. Have more guests like this on. Jeffri Chadiha, Sean Salisbury. Can't thank you two enough. Make sure to catch us on all our social media, Twitter, Facebook, our website, theoutsiderspodcast.weebly.com. Thank you all for listening. Let's go.